it's okay to be these things.
Yes.
Like my son crying more than someone else's, and I don't respond this way isn't like I'm being soft, but I'm actually being like giving him space to process, right? Like
Hmm.
I think a child that expresses themselves in the way that my son maybe does, or I want him to, is a reflection of like we gave him space to do that.
Right.
And if he didn't, that's actually not okay. Like what happens when I think we've reached a place in society where a child being a child is like problematic, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
and it's something that needs to be fixed. When actuality is like they actually can't regulate. Like it actually makes sense for them to do this thing. They can't do it. Like
Right.
adults could barely regulate. How the hell do you expect a child to?
Welcome to 3%. We're your hosts, Jamie Haig.
And I'm Blake Roberts.
We're two best friends, fathers, husbands, and just two guys trying to figure it out.
We're also therapists, which is probably a pretty important part.
That's true.
And we believe that at our best, people are 97% honest with themselves and others. And it's that hidden 3% of emotions, needs, desires, and behaviors that we keep to ourselves that keep us bound to shame and loneliness, from which many of our issues stem.
Each week on this podcast, we'll interview leaders in the fields of psychology, theology, arts, and athletics to explore holistic masculinity. We're not here to tell you the man you need to be, but we are here to help you explore what gets in the way of being the man you want to be.
We're going to help you develop courage and give you the tools to share your 3% in the relationships that matter most so you can more deeply connect with yourself, God, and others. So, pull up a chair.
Let's get into it.
So let's be honest. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 3% podcast. And so if you've been listening for a while, you may have heard us talk about Substack, or if you're on our email list, that's the platform that it comes through. The reason I'm saying that is because our guest today is actually somebody that I met, connected with, whatever language you use when you talk to somebody on social media that you don't even know where they live, through Substack. I've been writing on Substack for a couple of years. If you don't know about it, you can look it up. It's basically like a blog / email marketing platform combined. So it's a place for people to write more long form content. It's a little different than other social media platforms that are traditionally shorter content. And so our guest today, Marc, is a writer and a father, and he really combines those two things in his publication, which I found, I don't know how long it's been, but he's been like one of my favorite writers on Substack because of the way he writes, the vulnerability that he leads with. And his Substack is called Raising Miles. And he writes and I'll let him talk about more about this, but he writes letters publicly to his son. And it's just immersed with like what it's like being a first-time dad, what it's like being a black man raising a black son. And it's been so beautiful for me to like just get almost like a seat into Marc's world and into his perspective, and to be able to help me expand my thinking about what it means to be a dad and what it means to be able to relate to different people's experiences. And anyways, all that to say, I'm really excited. We're really excited to be able to have Marc on today to talk about fatherhood and just what it looks like for us to share. One of the things you say in your bio is that you share the joy that you didn't experience yourself. And I think a lot of us and a lot of our listeners can relate to that. And a lot of our listeners that have had maybe complex family dynamics growing up, or we're trying to learn how to create something and give something to our kids that we maybe didn't fully get. And so, Marc, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Jamie and Blake. Really appreciate you reaching out to talk about all things about being dads. How old are your kids, by the way?
So my son will be 4 in August. His name's Leo. And then I have a daughter named Charlie who just turned 1.
I love Charlie. The name is cool.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Awesome.
we've got a daughter named Charlotte who goes by Lottie. She'll be 2 in July.
Got it.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
So,
Cool.
and yours, how old is your son?
Miles turns crazy. 2 in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all the dads that are listening and moms that have kids in that age range are like, yep, we get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in it.
The exhaustion is super real, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I feel like parenting is like learning about you know, this other person, but even more about yourself, more and more and more all the time. And I think writing about it, it feels selfish because like writing about fatherhood feels more for, at this age it feels more for me than him because obviously he can't read. So I've been learning a lot about just myself and what does it mean to be a dad in relationship to my own father and or this little person. It's a beautiful journey. So I think writing it is really cool because one day he'll get it, but I'm able to see my own development. You know,
yeah,
like capturing the first time he like crawled away from me, and I'm like emotional about it. You know,
Yeah.
those small things that I feel like I don't really remember those moments anymore because he's walking and running now and not crawling anymore. So these subtle changes happen so quickly that writing about it feels like you're capturing like a moment in time, you know?
And writing about it helps the experience like sink in more too.
Yeah. It's the act of really like pausing down. And I think like writing about it, I mean I write about obviously I feel like I try to write about the good and the bad, but I feel like writing about something and posting it publicly forces me to lean into the good, you know? So even when things are not good, I'm trying to paint a good picture to like sell myself, like sell to my own self that like, hey, it's gonna be okay. Because I mean, you all
Yeah.
know, like it's not always beautiful when they're throwing the tantrums or they have fevers or they don't want to sleep or you can't sleep, and then you try to find the thread, like, you know what, this good thing happened today, and that's really gratifying and kind of grounding in that way.
There's so many questions that I want to ask.
It's very
We-
meaning making
It is.
of your experience, which is very existential therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We forgot to ask the question.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We like to
No, it's not.
No.
It's something that we say. We ask every guest, and then we like forget to ask the guest.
Yeah. So we want to start off by asking, in your experience and in your view, what do you think it means to be holistically masculine?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like the word masculine feels like a taboo word immediately that I'm always interrogating, you know, that like to be masculine is this thing that in my mind and body I automatically, because of what's happening in our world, pair to be something that's toxic, but it's not, you know? And for me to be holistic masculine, like I think it just means to be human, like to be angry, but to be vulnerable and like, or how do we process like these feelings that we come up in a way that is healthy, you know? Because like it took me a while to realize like it's okay to be angry, you know, but what do you do with that anger? It's really important. What says it about you? So I think for myself, when I think of holistic masculinity, I think of someone who is constantly interrogating how they show up in a space to be like better to like themselves and other people, if that makes sense, you know? I think my issue sometimes, I talk about this with my therapist when I was going a lot, is that I've told myself that like to be masculine means almost to watch, well, not masculine, but like, how do I take up space, you know? So if I'm talking, I'm like, well, am I talking too much? If it's like if women are in the room, like, am I talking too much? Like, should I pass the mic more? I find myself sometimes overcompensating to not appear toxic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which makes it difficult to sometimes be assertive or make decisions because I'm always second guessing my space or what I'm doing, you know? Like, I don't want to be that man who does X, you know?
Yeah.
And that makes it difficult. And I think I wanna be a person who could be like confident, assertive, but also I'm also listening and being open, you know. But I want to be open and vulnerable, but I don't want to seem like I can't make decisions, you know, in those ways. So I struggle with. I think masculinity is something I struggle with a lot because I feel like I'm always nervous about being put into this box of like that guy who does X.
Yep. Yep. Which is the whole reason, part of the reason we created this show.
Yeah.
It's like, because we kept seeing that, like this language or this box that if you don't fit in this, then like you're not really a man.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of why we take the approach of we're not telling you the man you need to be. We're just helping you explore what gets in the way of being the man you want to be. Because I think holistically masculine needs to look different from person to person for us all to be contributing something worthwhile to society.
Yeah.
And even in the view of like, if you incorporate faith into that, what would be the point of making us as unique beings if we all contributed one exact cookie cutter of masculinity?
That's a good point.
So even as I hear you saying it, it's like the role of being holistically masculine is taking that reflective look at self to see how am I showing up here and can I grow in how I care for other people. But maybe sometimes for you that went to a place of then second guessing all of, like taking it maybe too far.
Right.
Is everything I'm doing not necessarily in line with my values, but is it perfect?
Yes. Right. Yeah. Well said. You guys are definitely therapists. Yeah, definitely therapists. Yeah.
How did you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely therapists. Yeah. I love talking to therapists too because it's so fun because I'm always like, you know, depending on the approach and stuff like that too. So yeah.
Yeah.
My wife always jokes with me. I think I've been, even more so since I've become a therapist, she's like, you do realize that 97% of the time you just answer a question that I ask you with another question. Like your answer is just asking me another question. Or either that or like going off on some like deeply philosophical, psychological rant that she's like, you lost me as soon as you started talking. I'm curious for you, Mark, you said, I love that you said part of your definition was to be able to be angry and to be vulnerable. And I don't know much about your background other than what I've read on your bio. Our relationship with our emotions is directly impacted by the systems that we grew up in, the family systems we grew up in, the cultural systems, the systems of like the generations before us, right? That all influence how we relate to ourselves and the world. So when I hear you say, you're talking about like being holistically masculine is being able to be angry and to be vulnerable and to be able to like advocate for yourself and take up space in a healthy way. It makes me curious, what has your relationship with your anger been like historically?
Yeah. I grew up in I grew up in a home with a man who wasn't my father, who was incredibly toxic in a sense that like varying opinion that went against his own could lead to like verbal violence, you know? And I think you learn early on that young that, you know, you have to like acquiesce very early on. And that violence could come from verbal, but it can come from like, you know, him talking to my mom about it and like making it like we were the problem, you know? So like I learned that, you know, we had to, my younger brother, to be safe, we had to be silent, you know? Because that would probably lead to consequences for us or her, you know? And I think like that overcoming that manifests itself today because I lean into speaking up and being open as a way to resist or to demonstrate like I have agency now and I can use this voice of mine, you know. But we couldn't express like things like anger or just certain things, you know, because or be vulnerable because it could be an attack. Like one story, I never shared this story, and I probably it's whatever. I remember in college I got into like an altercation with a good friend, and I called my mom about it, you know, and I was away at school, and when I ended up coming back from school, I was older now, so this person was in my life since I was maybe in middle school to like college. Anyway, when I came from college, him and I got in an altercation, and he brought the situation up because I didn't react like a man should. I didn't fight my friend basically, and he called me like a bitch, you know, and like that hurt so bad because like he took this extremely vulnerable thing that I told my mom and I guess him at the time and tried to weaponize it against me, and that kind of like broke me, and I didn't know how much it hurt until like years later. I'm in therapy and I'm like emotional about it, you know?
Right.
So when you ask the question of like, oh, like, what's your history? Like, I feel like I learned, you know, in these early adult years that we are just older versions of our childlike selves, you know, and constantly responding to like, even now, like responding to that person in the room, whether it's my mom or my stepdad or whoever it is, and trying to confront those things, you know? And I feel like that bleeds into parenting because there is some deep beliefs I may have about myself that I'm trying to unlearn that I got from the environment that I'm not saying was always unhealthy, but like that I got from the environment that with my own son who's only 2, I'm constantly thinking about like, well, how do I make sure that this doesn't become his cross that he has to bear? Like, how do I, you know, how do I, right now I'm learning a new skill, and I feel like in doing something new, I'm forced to face with a lot of beliefs about myself. Like, man, I'm not smart enough. Can I do this? Like, why is it taking, you know? I'm like, well, if I convince my son that he can do anything ever, he'll never have to feel like, you know what I mean? He'll be like, no, it's not that I'm dumb. This thing is dumb. You know, like, how do I don't know. And maybe it's indoctrination. I don't know. But how do I give him like those skills early on that maybe I wasn't given or equipped with that'll make his life a little bit, you know, I don't want to say easier, but just different, you know, and maybe easier in that way.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story too.
Yeah. I feel those same things around learning. I think, I feel this around marriage, around fatherhood, but again, that's learning to do something new, right?
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, it really highlights our selfishness. I've said to a few people before that I feel like going from single to dating is learning to surrender some forms of selfishness. You're starting to think about you and someone else. And then to go from that to engaged is another level because you're thinking of them when you're dating, but you really are autonomous beings. And then when you're engaged, there's this other commitment that now you're thinking for and with them. And then you're married, and it's amazing how that engaged to married level of surrender of selfishness is quite a jump. And in the married stage, you're like, it really highlights what do I hold to that I say is mine. That is really just how I built my life, and now I'm bringing someone else into that, and I need to learn to surrender the parts of that that are selfish. But nothing highlights that better than having a kid. And when you have that kid and you suddenly have to reorient your life around a human who can do nothing for you except for be the focus of your love. And they can they give you some really cute feedback and they look like you and that's all great. But I mean, truly, they're not productive humans. So it really is like I'm reorienting my life around this act of parenting, which is needs to be selfless,
Yeah.
but it highlights all of my selfishness.
Right. Yeah. It's a mirror.
It's
Yeah.
a mirror for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, down to like, I used to go play ultimate frisbee at a park every Saturday morning for like 3 hours. And now I'm like, wow, 3 hours is such a block of time. That was unbelievably selfish and not even bad at the time. And maybe not bad now, but selfish. And I can't do it now. I have to surrender that because of what it is now and how I had to reorient my life. And I just kind of, as you're talking about, fatherhood now for you and what you're trying to give to your son, that came up for me of like, I have to be aware of, regulate, and transform my relationship to myself
Yeah.
in order to not transmit stories of anger, stories of, I love that you said acquiescing, stories of acquiescing to others, stories of like, I'm not enough, I can't do this. I have to surrender all of that in relationship to myself so that I don't transmit it to him.
Yeah.
Or else I will parent according to those old stories. Or to a pendulum swing. I'll like, that pendulum was over here. It swings all the way over here, and now I'm like, you're never going to ever feel bad about yourself, and I'm going to make sure you don't. It's like, I don't know how I could possibly do that.
Yeah.
But that's the parent I want to be.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. It feels like what I hear you saying is, parenting and marriage is like the ultimate form of selflessness, and I think what God calls like this idea of what, becoming one, this one flesh, and it's super difficult. And I feel like I'm constantly, I don't know if you all feel like that. Like, I can't remember what my life was like before marriage now, even if it hasn't been that long, or before I had a kid, like 3 hours, imagine,
Right.
and it's so hard to, and I go between, I go between like, man, like what was I doing with my time and who I was with that time versus like who I am now,
Right.
It's so difficult, but you're right. I love how you said that, those experiences really inform, how we parent. And I'm trying to always, and that's why the writing helps. It kind of makes me think about that a lot.
I love that.
I'm curious, Mark, how, as if this is going to be like an easy, give us your 3-step solution on how you let go of the internal voice that says, don't be a bitch. As if it's not that simple.
Yeah.
But I am curious because like so many, I mean, so many of my clients, like we have those internal narratives.
Yeah.
Don't be a pussy is another
Yeah.
thing that a lot of my clients
Right.
put the explicit filter on this one.
I know.
But even that, like that is so true. And we need to be able to name it how it is, because that is the internal narrative that so many of us have because of like what you said, things that were spoken to us, spoken over us, that then became, we adapted it, our brain adapted it as our voice. And so now we have these moments as parents, as friends, where there is that little internal dialogue that repeats those same things, and it's not even our voice, but like we're so used to it, right? Sometimes it's hard to even catch. So I'm just curious for you, like what has that process been like?
I mean, it's always at the forefront of my mind. Like when my kid, I think, and I don't know if it's probably too early, but I feel like my son Miles at times feels very emotional, like, and I worry about that because we deal with that in a very loving way, right? But there's consequences for men, especially black men, who could be too emotional or acting out outside of a safe place and acting out meaning, and it's acting out sounds like something negative. Him being emotional or throwing a tantrum when he's older, or not following directions could have consequences. So I'm always battle like, hey, what does it mean to raise a child who is able to express themselves freely, with the idea that when they leave me or go outside, whether it's daycare or school or anywhere, expressing this could be consequence, right? Like no one's gonna hold that love and beauty the way we are gonna hold them, you know. So when I think about, like, recently someone close to us like said like, oh, I think he didn't say it like directly, but alluded to the fact that he thinks we're raising like my son to be soft, and I'm like, well, that's your opinion, which is fine, like I think that's okay, but if I could, I would like create, my solution would be to create a village of men or families who it's okay to be these things,
Yes.
like my son crying more than someone else's, and I don't respond this way isn't like I'm being soft, but I'm actually being like giving him space to process, right? Like, I think a child that expresses themselves in the way that my son maybe does, or I want him to, is a reflection of like we gave him space to do that.
Right.
And if he didn't, that's actually not okay, Like what happens when, I think we reached a place in society where a child being a child is like problematic, and it's something that needs to be fixed. When actuality is like they actually can't regulate. Like it actually makes sense for them to do this thing. They can't do it. Like
Right.
adults could barely regulate. How the hell do you expect a child to? So I think it's, but I
So
think it's
well
hard.
said.
I'm working with. I feel like I'm having conversations sometimes with people who don't see it how we do, and as a result, they're casting judgment on something they don't really understand or agree with, right? And like, I mean, you all are. I mean, I imagine you all, because you guys are best friends, right? It's when your kids are participating in an activity or something happens, like you're probably on the same playing field how you're thinking about things. I'm sometimes dealing with like, maybe I need to parent a little differently around these folks so I don't got to deal with the judgment sometimes,
Oh,
How
yeah.
do I step in confidence in my own parenting without
Yep.
feeling like, well, I'm a bad parent. I'm less of a man. My son is too, you know what I mean? And at the same time, I'm also already worried about like what happens when he's older. I write
Yeah.
about this sometimes, like, well, like, when does my son stop being cute to, other folks? Like, especially I think about, especially like white women love a little black child. He's beautiful. He's all of these things, but that changes because it changes for me, right? Like I'm not cute and cuddly and warm anymore, you know. Um, and like that happens. So I'm
Wow.
always thinking about this stuff, in my mind. And some might say, man, maybe I'm like, what's the word, I'm transferring, whatever it is, but it's a very real thing. So he's only 2 now, and I'm worried about when he's 12 and 24, because these things have happened to me. My solution would be, like, if I could, I would take like men like you and men like myself and men that I know, to like create a village around where it's safe, because when the harm happens, there needs to be space for restoration. Like he possibly, maybe he'll be the bully, maybe he'll be the bullied, right? Like, but where is the environment for that healing to take place when hurt happens? And I think we don't always have that.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. This analogy that someone said to me in grad school about attachment styles comes to mind, because I don't know what it's like in your culture, in your context, to have all of these. You have different narratives about masculinity and manhood than I do. Like, even when you said what it means to be emotionally expressive as a black man, I'm like, yeah, I don't know at all what that's like. I do think that this analogy to me is still inspirational and can be applicable, which is parenting and creating secure attachment is like being a lighthouse. The job in the kid is a ship in the harbor. The job of the lighthouse is not to calm the sea. The sea is going to be calm or rough or whatever is going to be day to day. The job of the lighthouse was never to calm that sea. The job of the lighthouse was to show when those rough waters come, I'm where safety is.
Wow.
And I think our job as men, like what it means to be holistically masculine is what gets in the way of me being a lighthouse. Not just to my kids, but to those around me and for myself. What gets in the way of me being safe? And I think,
That's really good.
like, for your son, when somebody's saying, like, you are raising your son to be soft, I think not only are you creating space for your son, you're showing your son what it means to hold strength when someone else doesn't have it.
Oof.
Come on, Jamie.
I like that, Jamie.
I think it's probably the part of me that gets angry about injustice, and I was abused, so I have a very justice forward part of me. I can tell because that part of me likes to cuss, and so when people mistreat others, this little part of me is like, I imagine it's like bouncing around in there, just like, oh, I'm going to say these things, but it also has some good ideas, or it helps my ideas that I think are important have passion. And I think I have this feeling towards what you are doing for your son, not just being not soft, but being strength.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that analogy because you can't necessarily, you cannot control the sea. You're right, you know.
No.
But like, I love that. Just Lighthouse is like it's also it's a reflection of what you want for your son to be this thing, you know. And I think it's important that, you know, like even in the night that the lighthouse still shines anyway. Ooh, that's a great.
Oh, come on, Mark.
That's great. I like that. I like that. That's awesome.
I have a similar part of me that gets really angry when this is a thing that is said a lot in, you know, the nanosphere and even in my sessions, like internal dialogues with this real resistance toward what we're categorizing as soft. And as you were saying that, I'm like thinking about the person who has that perspective, because I have parts of me that sometimes, definitely not as much now, but that still can sometimes fall into that like belief of like, oh, maybe I'm being too soft. And I think that when we say that, or when we believe that, what like is true in our core, in that person's core, is that they actually long to be able to be soft and to have people that are soft toward them. But it hurts so bad to acknowledge that because they didn't experience that. So to just reject it and call it this negative thing so that then they can maintain this facade of strength.
Yes.
Feels safe.
I'm a soft black man. I think that's in a way where like I probably cry. I'm this moment talking to you all, I feel emotional. I feel emotional lately and just in general because of where I am in my life and the lack of having men to talk to about these things and always friends. I'm in Birmingham where so I'm from New York City originally. I came here about 2 years ago. So I'm here in a sense of where I'm looking for community. I don't have that. So like, you know, you all right now talking to you are filling a gap that I want, and it makes me emotional. I'm okay with that. And I think, you know, I'm okay with being soft in that way because I you know, like I have different, you know, I can be hard when I want to be all of these things, but I think that what we're saying is like it's difficult when someone is like trying to weaponize it in a way like it's like a bad thing, like no, like it's okay to be soft, and I wish we had more of it, because it's powerful. I think it's really really powerful, and I think I wish more men allowed them to be soft, because I think that a lot of us are really fragile. We're really fragile, and I think it's really hard to admit it, because like that means weak. I'm not saying that we're weak. Like we have a lot of strong, fragile people, right? Like we're fragile, and I think that because we aren't allowed to be fragile, we don't want to be soft, and we have to be this thing. It's like you're saying, it's a cover up. He wants to be that,
Right.
and I wish that for him, and I go back to the point, like this, like the analogy, like, hey, like I want my son to also be soft, but what does it mean to raise him in a world that like where softness is seen as like this weakness thing,
Right.
right? And I think sometimes, I don't know if you all feel about this, like, well, I want him to be soft, but the world might see him as weak. Do I then have to teach him? I don't want to, obviously, to perform in a way that is palatable, so he doesn't have to experience X, right? Like I can take being called soft. I'm older now, it's okay, right? But then when he's a little older, and unfortunately when we get older, like the peer pressure, right? Who we are sometimes is formed by a reflection of what people think of us, So constantly thinking about that. Like I'm okay with being soft. Like I actually want more soft men around, so we can like
Right.
talk and talk about the real work that needs to be done. Like seriously, like the real
Right.
work needs to be done.
I'm gonna make somebody mad saying this.
Do it.
I would go off on the limb to say right now that every man is born soft.
Yes, 100%.
I have not met a dad or a kid when they are younger who would not embody what we're categorizing as soft, which is just like being emotional, being sensitive to the environment, to relationships.
The image of God.
Right. Like we are born that way. And so it's not even, I don't think, yes, there are some people that are maybe more sensitive than others in certain ways, but it's not even a matter of like, I hear so many guys come in my office and they're like, I'm just not very emotional. I'm like, it's not true. It's just not true. You are emotional. You were born emotional, and somewhere along the way, you started to believe that to not be emotional was actually how you stayed closer to people.
Yeah.
And now you're in these relationships where you're not being emotional and you're actually experiencing distance, but your body is saying, no, we have to keep not being emotional. And
Yeah.
so we can stay close to people, but it's actually keeping us disconnected because we were never meant to not be soft.
It's castration. Like we've cut off a part of ourselves to participate. That's what it is. Like that's what it is. We've cut off a part of ourselves to exist in being. We're like, well, you need this thing. Like you need it, And I think, I love what you said. Like that person saying I was doing it's something that they long for themselves, and I can't blame him because he never seen it before. Right. His own father, if he was present, wasn't soft with him, or when he was, it was like something that was like so. When he sees me doing what I'm doing with my son, to him, I'm doing something wrong. Right? And it's like, well, like if you're seeing the world with lens with shit all over it, of course it's gonna like whatever you see is messed up. And I think I tried to post this article here from the Atlantic. I've been reading over and over. Like it's like called "What Parents of Boys Should Know," and it talks about like developmentally, even in the womb, we develop slower than girls. Right? How the presence of not having two parents affects boys worse than affects girls. Right? Like as a result, they might be more violent. There might be more of these things. It says that we need it. We need it more. That even when boys don't have two parents at home, versus a girl who doesn't, they perform academically worse. It's in the research. It's almost it's biologically, and it's yeah, like we're born that way in general, you know?
Yeah.
It's right. Something happens where we feel like we have to then perform to uphold this narrative that you shouldn't cry or you shouldn't do this thing. You shouldn't like you shouldn't be this human part of yourself.
Right.
You know.
It's a tragedy.
It's sad. It's really sad, you know, because like I know that, you know, and it sucks sometimes having to like deal with somebody who is talking out of their trauma and pain. Because now you're trying to spread it to me and my family. And if I could, I would just be like, let's just go over here, you know. But that's the reality. I can't create a environment where it's a bunch of Jamies and Blakes around, you know. So
Yeah.
deal with it.
As much as we would all like that, and
Yeah.
I think a little bit that's what we're trying to do with 3% is like have these connections with people who want this too.
Yeah.
What I would say is, and it's why I keep coming back to the lighthouse analogy so often, is our inability to create absolute safety for our kids
Yeah.
is because we were never designed to calm the sea.
Right.
But that does not change our ability as dads
Yes.
to maintain being a soft,
Yeah.
holistic lighthouse
Yeah. Yeah.
in the midst of a turbulent sea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Because it's just dawned on me. If I could sum up into one sentence, my biggest goal as a father, as a person in general, we're talking about fatherhood, is to not be somebody that is safe all of the time, but to be somebody that my kids can come to and say, hey, Dad, I don't feel safe with you right now. Because if they feel comfortable coming to say that to me, then that inevitably means that I'm going to be safe more of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've done your job by modeling safety. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Oh, Mark.
I wish
I
we
could-
didn't have a
yeah.
hard out today.
Yeah, man, it's just, it is a real joy to talk to you, man. And for me to get to meet you and interact with you. How can people support you and find you, Mark?
I'm on Substack, Raising Miles. Marc
Link will be in the
Typo.
show notes.
Yeah, Marc Typo. That's where I spend a lot of time. And they can support me by just sharing the letters. I have a coffee page and a pay subscription, and that money that I collect from that is going towards Miles's college fund. So,
Oh, that's sweet.
awesome.
because college is expensive, obviously.
Yeah.
So whatever money I make, I just my wife, she has a 529 plan. Well, we have a 529 plan for him. She contributes part of her check to it, and I contribute whatever I make from writing to that.
That's such a cool idea.
So cool.
That's all I could do. So if folks want to support, every dollar goes a long way, especially because college is getting more expensive. So
Yeah.
if you can, that'd be great.
Yeah. And if you want to just learn how to be a more present, intentional dad, just read any of Mark's stuff.
That means a
And
lot.
not feel alone in your feelings of vulnerability.
Yep.
Read them.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you both for your commitment to just healing and doing transformative work for men. I feel like I wish I could do this, what you're doing for more men in general, but I think I'm doing it my own way. So
Yeah.
thank
You
you.
absolutely are, man.
Thanks for
You
the work
are.
on the battlefield. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. That's
This has
awesome.
been fun. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
No
Yeah.
doubt, man.
Well, to everybody listening, we're glad you're here. Keep coming back. You're worth it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode. Listen, we're working on some really practical resources to help you connect more deeply with yourself and others. So if you head over to our website, 3percentco.com, you can learn more about that. The link will be in the show notes. And this is the part of the show where we ask you for some help. Listen, we don't have a big fancy production team. We're recording these in my therapy office in between sessions and in the margins of our life. We just really believe in the message that much. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and rarely would I take the time to review and rate a show, just because honestly, I forgot. It wasn't until we started doing this show that I realized doing that actually really does help these platforms notice our show and get the word out. And so if any of this is impactful to you, we would love it if you took a second to leave us a review, rate us, or if you want to just do it the old-fashioned way, text this link to a friend and say, hey, let's talk about this episode. Whatever you do, make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening to so you never miss an episode. We're really grateful you're here, and we'll see you next week.
So let's be honest, let's be honest, let's be